Maybe there is life after death. Do you believe so?
I am totally convinced. Death is a transition. When we are born, what is, we put on a cover, a case. That is the body. We carry it for a while, but our true essence endures eternally.
What were the experiences that the patients told you about too?
The first thing they notice is an out-of-body experience, that they feel a sense of peace, harmony, and joy. And finally, everyone talks about a light they see. When they see the light, the feeling of peace, harmony, joy, and above all love reaches levels never experienced in the human dimension.
And does this go from body to body using different bodies?
Man, now they are touching on another topic, which is a more delicate topic, which is reincarnation. It's true, reincarnation exists.
But how can you believe it with such certainty? Why?
Clinically, there are cases, there are very serious studies, Ian Stevenson, Brian Weiss, and then there are also objective proofs. With advanced hypnosis, past lives can be recognized, restored, and remembered.
What would you say is the purpose of life then?
The purpose of life is...
Hello everyone, and welcome to a new podcast from Nude Project. Many times we live with our backs to death, as if it had nothing to do with us. But it exists, and someday you and I are going to die. But what is there afterward? Today we talk with a man who has saved hundreds of lives, and some of the patients he has revived have confessed to him that they saw something more. You might think he's making it up, but he's not a conspiracy theorist. He is a surgeon, a highly reputed scientist who, after years of research, is going to tell you something you won't be able to believe. Manel Sans Segarra, welcome.
Raise your hand if you know what Nude Project is. Damn.
Good afternoon, Pasti. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm excited, especially because this is aimed at the youth. The youth is a group that I truly respect, and I am enthusiastic about being with them, understanding them, and helping them in any way I can.
Well, for us even more, and hopefully we catch a bit of your wisdom. And it's curious that a week ago I started researching your videos, and for the first time I discovered a scientist and not a conspiracy theorist, talking about the possibility that there might be life after death. Do you believe that?
Totally convinced. I am convinced by my experiences that I have had throughout my professional life, especially fundamentally through NDEs, near-death experiences. They are a phenomenon. Experiences that patients have whom we diagnose with clinical death for various reasons, meaning they are in cardiac arrest, respiratory arrest, without reflexes and without brain activity. At 15 or 20 seconds after the heart stops, the electroencephalogram is flat, meaning these patients have no cerebral mental activity. These patients, the ones we managed to revive with cardiopulmonary resuscitation measures, well, some of them told me a series of experiences that caught my attention. And so I dedicated myself to researching, looking for literature, contacting experts in other disciplines to find what every scientist seeks in the face of a phenomenon, whether organic or emotional, which is the cause, what we call etiopathogenesis, or the intimate mechanism of production, which is pathophysiology.
And the first contact with a near-death experience, what was it?
It was precisely because of a patient that I was the chief on duty that day in the emergency service of my hospital, Belvich University Hospital, who had a very serious traffic accident and was brought to the hospital. And upon admission, the diagnosis was already clinical death. He had several fractures, hemorrhages, and so on. In other words, he had the characteristics we mentioned. We resuscitated this patient with resuscitation measures. You know, they are like external cardiac massage, intracardiac puncture with adrenaline to stimulate cardiac contractility, and then apply the defibrillator, the electric shocks to recover the cardiac contractility. The patient recovered, we operated on him, he fully recovers. And in the post-operative period, it was the first case that expressed this to me. I also had no experience with this phenomenon. And he told me about a near-death experience, very typical, and that's where my interest was piqued.
Were you on duty at that time?
He was the head of emergencies that day at the emergency service of the Belvitge University Hospital. I operated on the patient.
How much time passed between when the operation ended and they managed to revive him until he recounted the experience?
Days, because this patient also had a cranioencephalic trauma and spent days intubated, monitored in intensive care in a coma. And when he woke up, he then moved to my surgery ward, and it was 2 or 3 weeks later when he told me about this experience.
Stuff, huh?
Strong, Mother of God.
I haven't said anything in this podcast. It's like, I don't know what to add, if I feel intimidated. It's just that I find it hard to process how it's possible that the patient describes something like that, and especially how you don't find alternative answers, right? If the patient was in a coma, didn't you think, well, what they're telling me are hallucinations typical of any dream? What led you to think they weren't hallucinations, but that something really strange was happening?
The doctors, the training of doctors, and it is what I teach my medical students, or used to teach, and to postgraduate residents, well, we instill in them and train them with the scientific method, Cartesian and Newtonian, materialistic, objective method. So, I have this training, and then precisely when the patient told me this, I was the first to be surprised, because I thought and reasoned with all logic, because I treated the patient. I say, if I have this patient dead for a few minutes, how can it be that during these minutes this patient tells me things? What they describe is spectacular, really spectacular. So, with my scientific background, I thought these are hallucinations. I can't explain it. So I sought advice and information from others, from doctors in other disciplines. I contacted neurologists who are experts in neurophysiology. I contacted psychiatrists and psychologists who are experts in the human psyche, to see if they could explain to me what the intimate mechanism of this production was, because with my materialistic training in the scientific method, I couldn't find explanations. And the meeting was very curious.
What did they tell you?
I told them, I said, I see this. They didn't even let me finish presenting my request. They told me, these are hallucinations, because nerve cells are very sensitive to the lack of blood supply, and if there is cardiac arrest, they do not receive blood. Of the neurons in general, their physiology is quickly altered, and then their dynamics are altered, and they say things that do not make sense. They classify them as hallucinations. And then I said to them, let's compare it. I said, the hallucinations you see in your patients, do they have a logical structure? No, they are completely absurd. The hallucination of a patient is what is seen, for example, in a psychotic episode, in schizophrenia, or in any type of hallucination that psychiatrists see. They are absurd. They have no logic. I told them, the experiences that have been told to me are tremendously logical. Secondly, I told them the patients repeat a series of items. That is, from one patient to another, a series of items is repeated. The differences are more about nuance than concept. They told me, no, the hallucinations of one patient have nothing to do with those of another. They are completely different. And thirdly, my patients remember this their whole lives. It is a tremendous impact that conditions them. And no, hallucinations even make them feel ashamed. They forget about them. They don't want to know anything. And finally, near-death experiences have a very profound psychological impact on patients. It changes their existential conception and alters their life dynamics, their vital role. The hallucinations, psychiatrists tell me, absolutely do not have, if they forget, they don't want to know anything. So I told them, a hallucination has nothing to do clinically with a near-death experience. They acknowledged it.
But there are more things still.
Let's move on to explain what the experiences were that the patients told you about. And
they are very long, but I will go to the most important data because it explains many details. The first thing they notice is an out-of-body experience. And from an elevated position, they see perfectly what is happening. They are immensely surprised because they see their body on a stretcher and a group of medical staff performing resuscitation maneuvers and do not understand what is happening. They cannot communicate with the medical staff. They cannot communicate in their state using the usual means of communication, speaking, etc. So, for example, another case, which was precisely a medical staff member from my hospital, who knew us, approached me while I was resuscitating him. He tried to touch me, and when he touched me, he passed through me.
And did they look at each other? Could they see each other?
Absolutely. They see themselves with the structure, shape, and design. They fully self-recognize.
And do they move like people?
With such ease, to the point that they tell you, for example, I told them, it's very curious because during this phenomenon, they explain to you what is happening at a distance. That's all raw. They told me exactly what was happening throughout my emergency department. What was in the next room, what was being operated on in the operating room, which is very far away. But other patients, there are cases described in the biography that tell you about someone being resuscitated in the United States with everything happening on the other side of the world, in Australia. So, I asked them, how is it that you can move in this way? They say, if I think I'm in Australia, at the same moment I'm in Australia. And they tell you exactly what is happening down to the smallest detail at whatever distance they want. For example, what my patient told me, I later verified with the computers, and there was exactly the stuff he mentioned. The patients in the operating room told me they were operating on a femoral neck fracture, the trauma team. Indeed, they were. That is to say, they tell you with complete accuracy. Then after going through all this situation, they have a feeling of peace, harmony, and joy. They contact beings, which they call beings of light, who help them. And they can also contact deceased relatives. This is very typical. This patient contacted her mother, who had died. She felt tremendous joy. And finally, everyone talks about the light they see. And when they see the light, the sensation of peace, harmony, joy, and above all love reaches levels never experienced in the human dimension. It is common that they see life like a screen, as if it were a screen, the most important events.
Does that happen to everyone or just to some?
So this can be complete or not complete. That is, they can have all the items, or they can be total or partial.
But there are always items that repeat.
These data, they always have one or another. They are even classified according to the number of items they have. This classification was made by Bruce Grayson, an American. According to the number of items, they are classified as more or less. And finally, the beings of light said, Yakuria, you have to return to your body because you have not finished your life cycle in the human dimension, which is three-dimensional from an energetic point of view. And they refuse. They don't want to leave because the feeling of peace and harmony is so extraordinary that they don't want to return. But they had to return. This is more or less what the patients recount.
And how do you code life from now on, right?
Hard to believe this, huh?
It's crazy.
It's hard to believe.
You have it very clear from what it seems.
If they take the global bibliography, I have few cases, but there are thousands and thousands of writings in top-level global research centers, university level, with people, even Nobel Prize winners. That is to say, this is a fact really demonstrated countless thousands and thousands of times. In other words, it is not an anecdotal thing, but it is very frequent. And curiously, they all explain the same thing with items changed. Here they also include landscapes, music, many side aspects, which some include or not. But more or less the important ones that are repeated are those I have mentioned.
Well, I have a lot of curiosities about the details of what that dimension they are experiencing is like. I mean, apart from them looking at their body and seeing it as normal, if they touch, in your case, when they touched you, they passed through you. But when it came to moving, could they open a door or did they also pass through it?
They go through it.
Did they go through it?
Everything that is three-dimensional, material in our world, they pass through it, they cannot grasp it.
And what can they grab? There are things...
But it is in another dimension. They are in what is called the astral world, which is two-dimensional. There are 11 dimensions in the universe. We are three-dimensional, we have three dimensions. They are two-dimensional, two dimensions. In this dimension, they can grasp things, but in another dimension, not in ours, they cannot grasp items.
And what can they grab then in their dimension?
Things from the other dimension.
Like which ones?
Whatever they want. They see fields. They see people. They see whatever they see. that they explain to you, they can contact them.
So, my big question about all this is, does this only happen in these near-death experiences, or is death already this?
Death is a transition. Death is not the end, it is a transition. When we are born, we put on a cover, a case that is the body, which is stardust, matter that the universe lends us. For a time we carry it, but our true essence, when it has completed its journey, separates from the body, which is physical death. But our real existence, which is what they talk about, endures eternally.
Like snakes which shed their skin and...
They shed the skin, but the snake continues. We remove the skin, the material suit that is our body, but our true essence, what makes us unique and exclusive, this is eternal.
I am smoking on this train in the middle of nowhere because life is only one and you shouldn't let the train pass you by. If there's only one life, are you going to live it without being subscribed? Seriously? As an incentive, I am giving away 3 sweatshirts to those who are subscribed and comment something you want to do before you die.
And does this go from body to body using different bodies?
Now they are touching on another topic, which is a more delicate topic, which is reincarnation. That is when this cycle ends, another cycle begins. It is true, reincarnation exists.
But how can you believe it with such certainty? Why?
First, because clinically there are cases. There are very serious studies by psychiatrists, by Ian Stevenson, Brian Weiss. And then there are also objective certified proofs. With advanced hypnosis, past lives can be recognized, restored, and remembered. And then there are anecdotal cases such as, for example, this is certified. Children who, without knowing anything, have a great desire to go to a country they have never studied or known. And when they go there, they recognize things. They even say, there was a bakery here, there was this and that. And they look it up at the town hall, and indeed they were there. And notice how curious it is that sometimes they start speaking without ever having studied the language of the country. This is certified.
And the feeling of peace, harmony, and joy that patients describe, is there no possibility that it is really, I don't know, the brain secreting some kind of hormone that produces that feeling as a defense mechanism so you don't suffer such a difficult moment? Or is it 100% due to the near-death experience?
The brain releases substances called neurotransmitters which transmit the nerve impulse from one neuron, from one cell to another, which are called neurons. And there are some called opioids, such as enkephalins, for example, which provide a sensation of peace, harmony, and well-being. But the threshold achieved with this has absolutely nothing to do with the threshold of happiness, peace, harmony, joy, and love that they experience in the other dimension.
Can this be measured?
The patients themselves tell you. The patients who have experienced it say, I have lived for many years in the human dimension, and I know what joy, peace, harmony, and love are. But what is experienced on the other side, they often tell us, there is no terminology in our language to properly comment on or express the experiences one has.
I mean, not even an orgasm reaches the...
Nothing.
Zero?
It has nothing to do with it. It's another dimension.
Purely with the confidence you have, it's impossible to tell you otherwise. I don't feel in a position to do so.
No, I don't have to. No, what I have done, I precisely operate within the scientific method. I want scientific evidence, that's what I've been looking for. For example, I'm going to tell you about a scientific proof that is definitive and very important. Functional magnetic resonance imaging was done. I don't know if you've heard of magnetic resonance. It's a test that through electromagnetic waves that pass through the body, achieved with powerful electromagnets, gives us very precise images, especially of the soft tissues. For the brain, it's excellent. It gives us very good images of the brain for diagnosing tumors or diseases, whatever they may be. And there is a form called functional, which means that at the same time it gives the image, we see which area of the brain becomes active. For example, when thinking, when having an emotion, when having a memory, Then we see which part of the brain is activated, and we can make a map of the activities of the areas that become active in relation to the mental activity we are evaluating. So these patients underwent a functional magnetic resonance imaging and were asked to recount their entire near-death experience while the scan was being performed. And they recounted it. And then they looked at what appeared in the images, and the following was observed. First, when they recounted it, the temporal lobe was activated, especially this area here. We have already said that this is where the highest activities occur: intellectual activity, rationality, and free will. Then this shows, as the neurologist himself said, and the neurobiologist, that what is being recounted has a logical structure which hallucinations do not have. Secondly, when she recounted having an experience that had a significant emotional impact on her, for example, the one where she saw her mother, and they described it, the temporal lobe was activated. This is where a person's emotional activity is manifested. And what caught attention is that when they described an object, pay close attention, that they had seen from a distance far away. During the near-death experience, in these journeys they take, they had seen a material object that had impacted them. This conditions memory. So this image was memorized in the occipital lobe, and when it was described, the occipital lobe was activated. Do you know what the neurologist told me? He says this can't be true. I say, man, the images are here, and I asked, why does it surprise you? He says, because the patient doesn't lie. Pay close attention. The patient is not lying. They are describing an image they saw in the near-death experience from a great distance. This, as it impacted him, conditioned memory in the occipital lobe, where images are interpreted. There are special neurons called mirror neurons, where the memory of objects is stored. And when explaining it, I said, after a long time, there is interference. What he recounts with the memory he had stored, and the occipital lobe is activated, so he is not lying, he really saw it. This is objective proof, which is what I seek as a surgeon, as someone who is based on a scientific method.
I had heard that there are people who, when they are in a coma, have had some dreams. I remember when we brought in Jordi Sanchez, the actor who plays Antonio Refio, he told us that when he was in a coma, he suffered terrible hallucinations and such. When you're in a coma, there is brain activity, right? So that he can experience the hallucinations or not?
It depends. We know that the fundamental activity of the brain disappears after 15 or 20 seconds. There can be a very small basal activity that can last for an hour. Sam Parnia specifies this very well, who is a well-known intensivist from the United States. That is to say, there can be much smaller or much more subtle brain activity. But this can lead to what you have said, to hallucinations. That he will start explaining that he has seen things that don't make sense, don't have logic, don't have a logical structure. That is, they are things completely different in their structuring. Now, he may have also had an NDE. If it has logical structuring and includes all the items I mentioned, what this person had is a near-death experience. But if they explain it as hallucinations, it's different.
Have you ever experienced hallucinations?
No, never. No, I have not had any experiences like these. What happens?
No, I mean, I'm asking you near-death experience. I know they are two different things, but have you ever suffered hallucinations?
No, I haven't. No, I am a man. I have always been in my life, a very rational man.
As a doctor, the doctor has to be very rationalist, very fixed on the scientific method. What I can tell you is that to contact this consciousness we have, which is our true identity, which I like to call supra-consciousness, because it is above the neuronal consciousness, the one we mentioned before. This supra-consciousness has continuity outside the brain. It persists after death, as we have seen with patients. This supraconsciousness can not only be contacted during an NDE, it can be contacted while awake, that is conscious. How? With deep meditation.
And have you achieved that?
Yes.
Do you meditate
Yes.
daily?
Daily,
More or less how much time?
22 minutes.
22 minutes every day?
Yes.
How long have you been doing it?
2 or 3 years.
And it has allowed you...
There comes a moment when you make contact, it doesn't always take much effort. The thing is, I don't have the evolution that others have, who can astral project, do astral travel, all these things, and I don't reach those depths. But you do make contact, and it's very noticeable.
How will you describe it?
Man, first you have to... meditating is like Christian prayer, done with great devotion. It's about focusing the mind on just one thing and eliminating all the continuous impact we have from external and internal stimuli. Thinking, the thoughts we have. So you focus it on just one thought.
And what is that thought you choose?
Each person chooses one, the one they want. For example, breathing. Thinking about breathing, you have to focus your attention on one thought. So you have to do the following. First, relax. After relaxing, focus on breathing, as breathing is fundamental. Thirdly, you have to... There are various techniques. You can use a mantra, as it's called, meaning repeat a type of word that focuses your attention, and then you enter concentration. And what do you notice if you do it well? I took a course of 1,500 hours. To get a bit of an idea of what meditation is. The first thing you notice is you lose awareness of the body. You are not aware that you have legs or arms or anything. You are only conscious of your mind, of the thought you are focused on. Secondly, you notice a great relaxation, a feeling of looseness, tranquility, peace, harmony. And the times you achieve, if you ever achieve, which is not easy, you notice a feeling of openness, expansion, amplitude, that you are part of everything, that you are the universe, that you are nature. We are united with everything. We are the universe and we are nature. This is the problem with our society, where the ego prevails, which is our other identity, instead of authentic consciousness. And the ego does not stop. It creates the dualism, separation, objectivity, and is selfish, seeking power, dominance, wealth.
And a blind person, how would they experience an NDE?
There is a beautiful study in the United States as well. Here they studied people who had a physical defect. For example, they were missing a leg. Blind from birth who had a near-death experience and were surprised. During the near-death experience, the blind person who had never seen saw everything. The one missing a leg was complete because they were in another dimension. The blind person was frankly stunned. They had never seen anything. And during the near-death experience, they saw.
Okay. And a blind person who experiences something like that suddenly can sees everything perfectly, feels joy, harmony, then returns to their body? Wow. If they really felt it so deeply, they don't say, hey guys, I'm leaving. You know? No, they don't say, look,
It's just that, no, I want to tell you that the patients I have recovered, do you know what they have told me? You played a dirty trick on me, you harmed me. I didn't want to come back. They don't want to come back. And others told me, they say, death has been awakening and being born to understand what our life really is. Now I know what my life is. Look, their super consciousness. Then they realize that here we are living in a materialistic way, dominated by the ego, which is not our true identity.
And based on this philosophy, how do you live life after knowing all this? Has anything changed?
When you meditate and connect with your super consciousness, you will notice the following. First of all, there are changes. Meditation causes morphological changes that we can observe. In the magnetic resonance imaging, it has been seen that those who meditate regularly experience changes in the hippocampus. The hippocampus is an area of the brain in the midbrain called the limbic system, which changes and increases in size. Another part of the midbrain, called the amygdala, increases the thickness of the gray matter of the frontal lobe. No? That is, there are morphological changes with meditation. And then from an emotional point of view, you notice the following. First, you manage emotions very well. I used to be an extremely strict person. Well, in the operating room, you have to be strict. It's a very serious thing, very serious. You don't accept jokes or that. So if someone made a joke, sometimes I didn't like it, to be honest. Jack, you sleep much better, you have more capacity for learning, you learn much more. You have more memory, much more memory, no? That is to say, one has a much fuller life and above all is able to see the authenticity of life. Before, for example, I would pass by and see a rose, a tree, a bird. You look at it and move on and remember it. However, now I am able to stop and look at a rose and be amazed by the essence of the rose, which is perfect. That is to say, one sees the essence of the creation of what is here, which is all perfect. A bird is perfect. So can you imagine the anatomy, the physiology that allows it to fly this way? This is marvelous. A rose is perfect. The petals. That is to say, there is absolute perfection. And this allows you to see and appreciate it. You are not so materialistic, and then you lose much interest in material things. For me, material things are now a means and no longer an end. Yeshivas think that in death, everything is left behind. Family, friends, material possessions for which we have fought so much and wasted our lives. And you come with nothing and leave with nothing. So you have to work, you have to do things well, you have to live, but always as a means. Not like today, where people kill themselves to get power, money. And sometimes they don't even know what they have, or how they are going to spend it, or have time. Just to get, this makes no sense, this is pure ego, this is completely lost when one connects with consciousness.
And what would you say is the purpose of life?
Well, the purpose of life is to know our being, our superconsciousness. This is the purpose of our life. And this is only conditioned at the moment you discover it, when you act according to the archetypes. The archetypes were described by Plato, by Kant, by Jung. They are universal norms that are in the mind of all the population, of all the people in the universe, and that indicate to us whether our actions are ethical or not. When you do something well, you have a feeling of peace. This is an archetype. When you do something poorly, you have a feeling of disharmony, of discomfort, if you do it consciously. I haven't done something well. Does someone tell you this? Who tells you this? The superconsciousness. How does the superconsciousness act? With empathy, altruism, kindness, justice, and above all, sorrow. Imagine if the world were dominated by the supraconsciousness. This would be a wonder to the world. Oh.
But when something bad also happens in the world, imagine a terrorist who kills a person. According to their ethical codes, that person, maybe the superconsciousness tells them that, they feel they are doing the right thing.
You don't notice it. It's camouflaged, covered, inhibited by whom? By the ego. The ego has four tremendous weapons to cover, camouflage the supraconsciousness so it doesn't manifest. What are they? Ignorance. This that we are discussing, most people don't even know about it. Ignorance, deep down. Second, attachment to material things. People only want to seek material things, the car, the watch, the trip, the house. Third, fear. Think that fear, any fear you have, even if it's for a simple thing, a small fear, deep down, is fear of death. All fear is fear of death. And I will tell you why. Because fear is conditioned by the ego. And the ego knows that it arises and forms in matter, in the mind, it is material. And it knows that the body ends, dies, and the ego will disappear. For this reason, any situation of fear, the ego trembles because it could be a reason for its disappearance. For this reason, any fear, deep down, is fear of death, because fear is an expression of the ego. And the last factor is selfishness. Egomania comes precisely from selfishness, from the ego. The ego is selfish. These are the four factors that the ego has to collapse, cover, inhibit, so that the superconsciousness does not manifest.
And do you think you have your ego in check?
It's very difficult. Look, Thales of Miletus, one of the pre-Socratic sages, lived in the 5th century before Christ, said, never forget this phrase, the most difficult thing in the world, difficult, is to know oneself. And the easiest thing is to speak ill of others. This was said by Thales of Miletus in the 5th century before Christ. The most difficult thing is to know oneself, to discover our true reality, our superconsciousness. It is the most difficult. And the easiest thing is to speak ill of others. It's clear that it's hard for me. Sometimes my ego slips out, but I am aware. I am aware that my ego has gotten the better of me, and I try not to let it win next time. Now I am conscious when my ego surpasses me. Oh, we need the ego to live in the material life, but it has to be an ego controlled, always by the supraconsciousness. What we cannot allow is for it to prevail, to dominate us, because if we let it, we will go too far. We will start wanting more goods, more material things, even if it means making a bad move. It doesn't matter. But I want... This is the danger of the ego. What are these wars you see now? All these wars, what are they? Pure egomania, power, domination, wealth. We kill each other, as you can see.
And for the young people and for us, well, for me, speaking personally, and as of what exercises or ways do you see to suppress the ego?
I really like that you ask me this question. I have already told you before, when I spoke with you, that I value, respect, I would even say that I love it. Youth is wonderful. I have been young and I remember. It is a wonderful stage that must be lived intensely. Youth is marvelous. It is a total opening. You dare to do everything interests you. You have goals. But I don't know if I have mentioned to you that at the medical college, a statistic was made that really caught our attention, which we discussed at the medical college, which is that the causes of mortality in our country were studied, and what sadly caught our attention is that the main cause of mortality among youth aged 15 to 35 years is suicide.
This makes you think a lot. A whole lot.
Why is it the first one?
Because one has to understand that youth, as I mentioned before, is an openness with a great number of goals, dreams, and projects. So the person who commits autolysis, he or she who destroys themselves, means that they are a person who no longer has any goals, does not value life, has no meaning, and takes it away. It takes courage in the last moment, but they take their life because they no longer have any goals or any meaning in life.
And why? Why doesn't he have it?
And why don't they have it? This is the most important question. Because the ego prevails. The ego always seeks success, fame, wealth, power, dominance. And today, children at 12 years old already know everything. Parents have given them everything. Trips, sex, they already know. Movies, they know everything with the media and what's available. They are kids who, as they are dominated by the ego, it's what they have learned in society. They always seek the pleasure of materialism. It conditions us to think about the ego. It never gives happiness. It gives pleasure. Happiness is given by the superconsciousness, which is different. So these kids need more and more stimuli, because pleasure each time, there is a habituation. They need more and more stimuli each time. So they turn to drugs, alcohol, sex. And there comes a moment when nothing makes sense anymore. And that's when autolysis comes. However, if they discovered their supraconsciousness, they would see that life is wonderful. These patients, I follow them, those who have had a near-death experience, and I ask them, these patients have completely lost their fear of death. They say, I didn't want to come back. Yes, for me, death is moving to a better situation. The only thing I ask is for the transition to be sedated, to have the pain taken away, but it doesn't scare me. I wish, they say, I wish I could be there again where I was. This is what the patients tell you.
They lose the fear.
And doesn't it lead to a tendency towards suicide?
No, not at all. Because at the same time they discover two things with the super consciousness, which can only be discovered with the super consciousness, which is true happiness. Happiness is the experience of peace, of internal harmony. It is not like pleasure, which is of external material origin. When one discovers there is a feeling of peace, of harmony, and one sees the essence of things, and this gives total happiness, and one discovers a second thing. Do you know what it is? Freedom. You are not free. Why? Because as you have, your mind is structured according to a character. The character is the way of thinking, being, and acting of the human being. How is character structured? Remember the phrase I am going to tell you now. Young people need to remember it. Aristotle said it 384 to 322 before Christ. Think about what I am going to tell you. He says, thought conditions action. Do you agree?
What you think conditions the action. The action determines the behavior. One who does outrageous things, well, they will say this is a thief or what? That is according to your action will be your behavior. Repeated behavior creates habits. Habit structures character, the way of thinking, being, and acting of the individual, and character marks destiny. What habits are instilled in the youth today?
You see it, the machines that seem phenomenal to me, without my phone, which is my agenda, I would be lost.
Nor could they watch this podcast either.
Exactly. I mean, we have to take advantage of everything. Progress is fundamental, but they are means, not objectives.
This is the big problem. That is, the habits that are instilled are habits that are completely materialistic, that develop the ego, and the ego leads us to this materialistic life, to live for pleasures, and pleasures ultimately lead us to suicide. On the other hand, if we instill habits of supra-consciousness, altruism, empathy, kindness, love, then these people will be free and live happily.
This is also a way to see what you have said, right? In a positive way, or at least I give it that light by saying, wow, I have connected with the idea that what you think you can end up materializing. In the end, that has been the whole path of everything you have here or that you generate here. It can come to exist because they are the habits you are creating for the future. So I have always had that philosophy in life, and I like that you simplified it in a way that makes perfect sense. The fact of being able to manifest what one wants.
This has stated a fundamental truth. Anything we imagine can be materialized. In Eastern philosophies, this is called the Akashic records. Everything imaginable is in the universe in the form of energy and waits for someone to have the ingenuity to think of it and make it happen. And it materializes. You have materialized your work, but first you thought about it, had the idea how you were going to structure it, how you were going to develop it. And then, when you already had a project and a dynamic, you have materialized your project, and it gives you everything we can imagine, it can be materialized.
But does this also have some kind of limitation? Because if not, a blind person would be thinking all day, I want to see, I want to see, I want to see, and still might not see.
Human beings have what is called vicarious capacity. Vicarious means that it is capable of compensating. A blind person cannot see, but you would be amazed at the development of other sensitivities and sensory activities. They have a capacity, for example, of hearing noises, of touch, that we do not have. Evidently, a blind person will have more difficulties developing a project because they lack a means. Consider that we relate to the outside world with sensory and perceptual organs.
knows that vision is the means by which 80% of our relationship with the outside world is carried out through sight. It is the most important. In other words, losing sight is what most disconnects us from our environment, but they develop other sensory and sensitive abilities.
And the question that arises for me through all this.
Many come to my mind.
No, I already, maybe I can approach you as my psychologist almost. That way you solve something for me. Something that comes up is, I have always felt that all this we are creating here, this company, even this podcast, right? The calling in my life was like a blank sheet with several points that I have to go crossing off. And I haven't seen it necessarily as something bad. But I am clear that I was born with an ambition from a young age, and I don't know if it's ego, call it awareness, but I was born with a mindset based on how my parents raised me, based on where I grew up, the people I grew up with, and something in my blood, I imagine as well. And I have always tried to put myself in a situation of saying, wow, I know that ambition, especially excessive ambition, is not good because it takes you to extremes, and extremes themselves are almost never good. But at the same time, I know that for me, it would be impossible to go to the countryside right now to look at roses and be calm all day, observing that awareness. I say, wow, I feel like I have, I don't know, I read the book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. I don't know if you've read it, but I loved it. And I said, okay, that's going to be my life. I'm going to go to an extreme for a while, reaching the extremes of the material world, for creating a company with this perceived success in the world. And then I will go retire in a place with monks for 20 years and find my peace there.
Don't do this, don't do it.
I'm already a bit into it right now, you know.
Listen, knowing our structural reality, knowing what the ego is, what the superconsciousness is, does not mean we shouldn't have an active, positive, and creative attitude in life. The important life of a human being should be positive, creative, and active. Otherwise, they will not be happy. We come here to do something. And to do something, each person has certain abilities, and these abilities need a push, a willpower, a creative intellectual capacity to develop them, each at their own level. And if you don't do it, having the abilities, you have come to do this and must do it as best as possible.
And you must have the ability, the will, and the effort to do your best so that your endeavor succeeds to the fullest. If not, you are not fulfilling your role. You have come to perform a function. The only thing that this function can be, as you said, is a function that not for this to progress, you start doing wrong and atrocities to everything around in order to stand out. You can push this forward by behaving ethically.
I think I have given the best definition of the brand's mission that we have heard lately. I believe there will be people wondering. We usually bring in artists and entrepreneurs, and suddenly we have brought in a doctor who is talking to us about all this. And I feel being a very important component of our mission, that search for purpose, I don't think I've ever heard a better definition. Because on one hand, as mentioned at the beginning, there's the part of self-knowledge, but it's a part that I believe is completed with those internal qualities that each of us has and that need to be put into practice. Because if not, I was just about to give an example to express my feeling about it, which is the fact that it's great to know oneself and know what one likes, but there are times when you practice certain activities. For some, it was playing the violin, and for others, it was editing videos. I don't know how to describe it, but I think it creates a moment of being super connected and feeling like time passes around you and you almost forget to eat when you're doing something you enjoy.
Do you know, when you are telling this, do you know what you achieve? Connecting with your superconsciousness. You are creating. Creativity is originating from nothing. And when you do this at a moment when you are passionate, you are creating, you are doing something that did not exist. And this creative function is inherent to the superconsciousness. That is to say, the one who works for the ego works without interest, in a mechanical way. The one who puts all five senses into it and enjoys it, and in the end has that inner satisfaction of saying, I have done something well, has created something. Their supraconsciousness has intervened. Creativity, do not forget, is a manifestation of the supraconsciousness. The ego will never make us create, it makes us create. The artist, the painter, the musician. They asked Beethoven, how is it that you composed the Ninth Symphony, which is a marvel? No, he says, I didn't compose it, I copied it, it was here. It was in his supraconsciousness and I have put it down. What you have told me has made me very excited. There is a moment when I am making a video, all work has the same merit. Work is a means for human development. And each person takes the work that provides and conditions their possibilities, their attitudes, and the environment in which they operate. But you have told me, and it made me very happy. There comes a moment when I feel that, I don't know, I've done something, I don't know, I've edited this, it's wonderful, it has created.
Time passes as if you don't even notice.
Because it has said something else. The superconsciousness always moves in the present, in the now, in the current moment. The ego moves in the past and in the future. In contrast, the supraconsciousness, in the present. You have said it very clearly. At the moment you are at the culmination of your work, you don't even think about eating. Time doesn't matter. You are in the current moment, in the now, enjoying that. It is your supraconsciousness.
I have seen that the first half of his head has lit up.
On the other hand, Amakeshi, I'm going to tell you something. If you, when making the video, say, I'm interested in selling this video, you say, well, I'm going to trick this person, I'll use cheaper material, and that way I'll make more money. Surely you wouldn't have felt the sense of peace and pride you had in your work. He had it when he did his best, when he created something, it was his superconsciousness. That's why work must be done with the utmost interest, done as well as possible, and given the time it requires.
Correct. And what do you think? There are many people in our society who, for example, find a job that they don't enjoy or don't like their job. It doesn't call to them, right? But they spend maybe 20, 30 years in that job, and as a life philosophy more like, hey, I'm going to enjoy the time I spend outside of work, and maybe when I'm with my kids or my wife, but that's 8 hours a day, they're not enjoying it. What do you think? Do they have a calling and are not answering it, or what happened?
Sadly, I would say that most of our population is in the conditions you mentioned. And do you know why it is like that? Because they are driven by ego. The ego is tremendously cowardly. It is afraid of change. Fear, changing to something new, embarking on another job, another project, something else, is an adventure. Life is an adventure. So, the ego is afraid. It prefers to live in a situation it knows it is not comfortable with, but at least it knows it. Not saying, I don't like this, I'm going to do something I like. For this, you need two things. First, to be aware that you don't like it. Then, have the courage to say enough, I leave this because it is not for me. And then the willpower to put all the interest and all the necessary effort into doing the finding and doing the work that one likes. The person who is dominated by the ego is a cowardly person, a person who does not have the courage to say, I do not like this. Have the courage to judge it internally and then say, yeah, I'm leaving this and going to look for what I like. You need courage, bravery. This requires courage and bravery. The ego will never let you do this out of fear of change.
I'm going to ask you for two definitions. One definition of the ego, and then a definition of the consciousness. What do you call it?
Superconsciousness. The superconsciousness.
Yes, the ego is our identity originating from the outside of material origin, and for this reason it is insecure, incomplete, changing. It depends a lot on the opinion of others. What others will say matters a lot to the ego. If you are handsome, if you are ugly, if you do it well, if you are rich, if you are... Today's society already sees it, that most people buy things and such to say, I have this, I have that, a good car, whatever.
Some pearls and everything.
And the goals of the ego are success, fame, recognition, power, wealth, and dominance. This is the ego. I call it the false self, the non-self, because it is not our true identity, it is the identity that is deceiving ourselves, the ego. We are deceiving ourselves with the ego. And the superconsciousness is our true identity. It is this consciousness that endures after physical death, that is eternal, that moves in the present moment, and is holistic with respect to the primary consciousness. Holistic means that it has the properties of the primary consciousness.
So, based on this philosophy, I could be older than you in superconsciousness, possibly, right?
Physically, no, because
I'm talking about myself, about my consciousness.
Indeed.
I can identify more or less, I'm a bit older.
The Chardin was a very important Jesuit who studied the evolution of the human being, and because of his theories, they almost excommunicated him, banished him, did not allow him to publish his works. And he said that life is a path that goes from the alpha point at the beginning, where we are full of impurities, and on this path we eliminate the impurities until we reach the omega point, where all impurities are eliminated. Holiness, as Christians say, Buddhahood, or enlightenment in Eastern philosophies. So this path can be lifetimes. Maybe you are much more evolved in life than I am. I wish that for you. That is, you are closer to holiness than I am. Everyone has their own path. And are you a saint? Are you a saint?
I don't know. Well, I see it as quite big.
That is to say, evolution.
Cycles, then yoga for 5 minutes in the morning so it assimilates to meditation.
The evolution of our supraconsciousness in the different bodies depends on each person.
And can you reincarnate as an animal?
Yes.
Also,
Look, in 2012 there was a big meeting in Cambridge where Stephen Hawking was present. Have you heard of the famous physicist, theorist and mathematician with an L, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, a terrible disease? Well, there they concluded with morphological, cellular and biochemical evidence that every living being has consciousness. The only thing is that the degree of consciousness is different. For example,
a tree too.
it has its consciousness, but it is very limited. A dog has consciousness, an ant has, for example, your dog. If you have a dog or a cat, it has three things. It has emotions. When it sees you, it gets happy. It has the ability to learn. If you teach it things...
And the tree, if we analyze the tree, does it also meet all the requirements?
No, it has a much lower consciousness. It is not capable of expressing feelings, but it has a lower consciousness. Every living being has it, and we have the highest, because we have our intellectual capacity and self-awareness. Do you know what self-awareness is? It's a mirror we have inside that tells us if what we have thought and decided is ethical. It's what you mentioned before, that this is an expression of our superconsciousness.
Well, just while preparing the podcast of it, we were talking yesterday about how we as children has the first contact perhaps with what at that time was going to heaven. We started to think about how death is really a very taboo subject, and we remember that when we first heard about death it was watching Tom and Jerry, when the golden escalators open for them and they slowly go up to a place called heaven. So the question arose of how one thinks death should be explained to children.
Death is only understood if we eliminate or properly value and differentiate our anthropological point of view of the human being, that is, how it is constituted, what the human being is. If I teach that child about what a human being is, we will never be able to explain a stage of their life. There are several stages in life: being born, growing, reproducing, aging, and dying. They are stages. And all this is because anthropologically, the human being has a constitution that conditions this vital evolution. So we must explain to the child what life is. And it's what I told you before. Life is coming here at birth, which is taking a body that is matter from the universe. This body has a function. It grows, develops, has intelligence. This will condition a vital dynamic, a way of living. It will age and die.
Think about how you would explain it to a child.
To a child, you have to explain to the child that the child has a body, and after the body there is a spirit. And this body has an evolution, and you cannot hide it.
Okay.
It cannot be hidden. For example, if a child's grandfather dies, it's really silly to tell them not to see their dead grandfather. They need to know that death is a part of our life, as natural as birth, and this must be explained to them. You have a body, and you have a logically in relation to their age. Explain to them is that you have a mind, but you have a life. Look, I am older than you, you have the grandpa, we are evolving, and you will do the same. There will come a time when it disappears, which is death. And to see the grandpa dead, it's the way to learn it. We must not deceive children as children are smarter than us. They understand it. We must explain to them the reality of life, that they will be born, that they will live, and that they will die. And this is life, and there is nothing to fear. That we are afraid of something means we have created a taboo and we hide it.
And now a slightly more personal question, but regarding your profession, you have to deal or have had to deal on many occasions with patients who unfortunately pass away. How did you cope with that to avoid taking the sorrow home with you?
I treated very complex patients there who had very serious conditions that compromised their vital situation, a lot of esophageal cancer, pancreatic, colon, rectal, stomach, and very seriously ill patients. Therefore, we cannot always cure. Sometimes we can cure, sometimes we alleviate. Meaning we extend life and make it as bearable as possible. And we always have to comfort the patient and the family. All three things are important. I have seen many people die. Many people. How do I treat them? Logically, in those situations, I cannot start talking to them about these realities, about whether the superconsciousness and all that. What I try to do is help them in the sense that I know the transition from life to death is a transition that brings about anxiety, fear, loneliness. It's difficult. Assimilation, all of you have had a relative with cancer and have seen pain, discomfort. They become thinner, ending up skin and bones, and in the end they die. And what do people say? Poor thing, now they rest. That is, the transition is very uncomfortable. So what I try to do is make the transition as smooth as possible. How? Well, in agreement with the family, sedating the patient, because this transition also causes a lot of distress for a patient. Sedating them, meaning they are given some medications that leave them in a drowsy state, so you take away all this distress, this suffering, until the final moment arrives.
And is the moment of death like a click? I mean, you give the person medication so they don't notice it as much, and is there a moment of, is the blackout instant?
Dying goes through 3 stages. The first stage is when the neocortex disconnects. The individual then starts to become clouded, begins to lose consciousness until they lose it. Then comes the second level, which is the midbrain, the limbic system, which by phylogeny is the brain that mammals have. So here they go through moments of this is where the emotional life is. Then this patient in this stage can go through stages of agitation, discomfort, where they are restless. And then the last stage comes, which is the inhibition of the basal brain, called reptilian, where all vital functions are controlled, the heart, breathing, temperature, metabolism. So when they start having heart rhythm disorders, breathing begins to stop until finally they stop. Death is indeed a moment in the end. That is, they do what is called hyoid breathing. They have apneas. The breathing slows down. They need a lot of carbon dioxide to accumulate to stimulate the respiratory center. And then they take deep breaths, stop, go a long time without breathing, do it, and in the end, it stops. At the moment, it stops. If you look at it, I saw it in my father. That is no longer my father. That is a body. My father is gone. It is no longer your father or your mother. It is something else, as they say. It is pure matter. It's a matter that in the end, according to the second law of thermodynamics, everything tends toward disorder, toward destruction. This in 4 days, not a single atom will be lost. It is matter that the universe has lent us, and we will return every last atom. Atoms that were made 13,700,000,000 years ago in the Big Bang, and it is stardust that is lent to us, and then we return it there. It is no longer your father, that is a thing, it is now matter. Your father is gone.
I had never received an explanation like that. It's incredible. What madness, and after this, for example, in your case, when your father's body disappeared from the human or the body.
You can burn it. If we burn it and take the ashes, it's nothing anymore.
But when it remains with consciousness, have you ever had any kind of contact, for example, with your father or that consciousness? Yes, multiple times. Could you describe how it has been?
No, I had it with my brother. How? My brother died and then contacted me. There are ways spirits, that is the super consciousness, can sometimes manifest to people, especially those close if they need help, if there are problems.
Does the human need help?
Either the human or the spirit, which are, they say, in a very unstable situation. Yes, it is. There are many people who have contacts with, no.
In what way did it manifest to you?
They manifest in an ethereal form. They do not manifest like a normal body. It's like a light, something poorly defined. It's ethereal forms in another dimension.
And did you see it when you got up in the morning?
And they make noises, but tremendous noises.
And in your case, did you see it when you got up in the morning, or how? I mean, at what moment?
Yes, at night.
But not dreaming?
Not dreaming. It woke us all up. Some tremendous noises and footsteps around the house. Footsteps? Yes. This is a reality, man. This happens.
Did he leave you a message? Brother, I don't know if it's something very personal. Yes.
That was in suffering.
Him. How can a spirit be suffering?
By the way, that is to say, I was in a state of genuine unease.
But then, in the other dimension, is it not all joy, peace, and tranquility? Can there also be conflict?
There are 5 to 7% of near-death experiences that are terrifying, which are called demonic and terrifying.
Oh. So what is this about then? The so-called hell? Because it seems to me...
No, there's hell stuff. These are things from heaven. Hell is something they've made up for us. Yeah. They've made all this up for us. It's not like this. There are no judges nor hells and these things. All this has been set up for us. But those people, it is not known. I have not had any such cases of these patients. But they are patients who have led, they say those who have had cases, that they are people who have had a very tumultuous life. It is not very well known why. And then they need tremendous psychological support, because they have lived through an extremely traumatic situation in the near-death experience.
And from this reality, you can also reach out to those people in another dimension, because you have said that it's not just that dimension to ours, but it can also be in
I don't know if it can be. I have never been able to do it, nor have I tried to do it. I don't know if it can be done. Here we would have to talk to people like, for example, the one there was Alan Kardec. They are mediums. They are people who have the ability to contact with super consciousnesses, with people who have already passed away.
I don't know, this conversation is leaving me 10. No, but it's just that I'm a person who lives very stressed, and I say, maybe I've made a change here.
Chronic stress, the tense situation, leads to the release of cortisol by the adrenal glands, and then catecholamines, which are adrenaline and noradrenaline. These substances over a long time cause stress. There is a continuous release. Then the persistence of these hormones leads to heart rhythm disorders, causes hypertension, it causes hyperglycemia, causes cholesterol disorders, digestive disorders, diarrhea, reflux.
Condicionan trastornos del colesterol, trastornos digestivos, diarreas, reflujo.
Dropping the immune system in defenses, both moral and cellular predisposition to cancer, to infections, etc. And then emotionally, they cause memory loss phenomena, learning difficulties, anxiety, stress, insomnia. All of this is caused, therefore stress must be controlled. Stress is very, very, very harmful. How can stress be controlled? Well then, the way to control stress, I'll tell you, there is only one way. Do you know who causes you stress? The ego. The ego. Once you control the ego, you will have a sense of peace, of harmony, and you will have the ability to face and manage emotions. You will be able to come here even if you have a job and tremendous pressures. You will handle them in a calm and progressive manner. It won't be that tension that causes cortisol and catecholamines. Consider that every emotional action of the human being has a biochemistry. That is to say, there is a response in the brain of neurotransmitters and hormones. Therefore, only if we control the ego will we control this neurochemistry and biochemistry, which is what conditions all these diseases I mentioned.
Okay. Well, I'll start a debate.
Forewarned is forearmed.
Absolutely right. Now a debate, we have talked about creativity or creatives, perhaps also artists in certain ways, are the ones who, for me, are the people who best express, right? Or that art best expresses that consciousness that we might have inside, right? Even you yourself, I think, have said something similar, and if I am wrong. And at the same time, I noticed something that if they are the people who, in theory, should best convey that consciousness to real life, and I think art is that. At the same time, I think that artists are the most frustrated people, or more that with more ego in a way, right? That clash makes me curious. I wanted to discuss it, because I feel, damn, how can it be? Artists generally have big egos.
Creativity, as Parmenides said, states from absolute nothing, nothing can arise. From absolute nothing, nothing can arise. For something to arise, there must be a consciousness. In our case, the superconsciousness, which has the capacity to create. Thus, the creative act is the expression at a given moment of our superconsciousness, which manifests with an artistic language. Painting, music, sculpture, language, writing, one's own language, according to each person's abilities. This is creativity. For example, a work of art, a painting. Since it is the expression of a person who is unique and unrepeatable, the work of art can never be repeated. Never. That is, a painting will never be the same, never. Because it is the expression at a specific moment of the artist. The work of art is this. It is the expression at a specific moment of our supraconsciousness. What happens with artists? Artists live from flashes. They live from flashes. They themselves tell you, I am in a stage now where I have nothing creative. And they get drunk, drink, smoke, do drugs, whatever, waiting for those stages. And on a certain day, boom, the light opens up for them and they create a composition. A musician that leaves you speechless. Another one makes an impressive painting. They act on flashes, but their life is dominated by ego. What happens is that they are people who are lucky that at a certain moment, bam, a flash comes from their superconsciousness, and at a certain moment they express a creativity that they create from nothing. This is the artist. Now, there are artists who have their ego under control and then lead a normal life. There are writers who lead a very normal life and write wonderful works of art, very good artistic literary creations, but these artists who are bohemians, they are pure flashes of their superconsciousness.
You, at your age, right, who has already lived a long life, so to speak, have you realized?
I find it short.
Yours, have you realized what your true calling is in the world, or is it clear to you?
Yes, for example, as a child, I have, from the beginning, since I was very little, I saw that I liked biology, and within biology, anatomy. Since I was little, I already saw clearly that I wanted to be a doctor and surgeon. I saw it from a young age. That is to say, I realized this. From the beginning, I just realized it. But logically, you need to have an environment that supports you, but you also have to fully do your part. This is fundamental, right? And then I ask myself, has this really been my goal in life? From a professional point of view, I can assure you that I feel tremendously satisfied. For example, now I have friends, even fellow doctors, whom I operated on for esophageal and stomach cancers. And sometimes I eat with them, and when they are eating for an esophageal cancer, the entire esophagus is removed, a tube is made with the stomach, then the stomach is raised up to the neck to reconstruct digestive continuity. They have to eat through the mouth. So I sit with them. Well, the other day I was eating with one, and I see that he eats, well, a plate of chickpeas. And I think, look, I won, you did well. It's a tremendous personal satisfaction. I helped this person. This gives me a sense. I mean, professionally, I feel tremendously satisfied. After operating on a patient and seeing that it has gone well, you have the potential to cure them and such. You finish the procedure, tired, exhausted, you sit there and have a coffee, but you have an inner peace. You say, I have done something positive. I have helped a person. That is to say, professionally, I feel very satisfied. I am totally convinced. But anyway, I want to tell you one thing. Later, have entered this chapter, but in life never forget one thing. There are no coincidences or chance. This does not exist.
There's always causality. There's a cause that explains everything, even though
that we do not understand it. There is a cause that leads us, and a series of synchronicities are established, things that you sometimes cannot explain how, to take you to the place where you have to do something.
And is that cause for you, God, or not?
What is this cause for me?
The original cause.
look,
Einstein defined this very well. Einstein said, there is no chance or randomness, only causality. And then they asked him, and what is chance? He says it is the way the primary consciousness acts anonymously. What is the primary consciousness? Look, at the beginning, until the Middle Ages, until the Renaissance, the Church controlled culture. And the Church did not accept reasoning much. When there was a problem, it would say, this is divinity, God who does it. With the Renaissance, man said, this is for something. We need to start reasoning and looking for a rational explanation for all natural phenomena. The scientific method emerged, written by Descartes, Isaac Newton in the 17th century, which is a materialistic method, a method that seeks the logical justification of phenomena. Our society, up to the present, is increasingly more materialistic. So, materialism separates you from divinity. Today it is very clear. I have already joined. There are many who have said religion is a toxin. It must be eliminated. What matters for man is rationality. Rationalities. Well, very good. But then two things happen. There are two fundamental phenomena, fundamental aspects that man has always tried to understand, which are the origin of the universe and the origin of life on our planet. This has been attempted logically to explain with the rationalist scientific method. And the rationalist scientific method says that the universe cannot be created, that it has been eternal. Because if it is created, it means someone made it. It didn't exist, and since we know that nothing can come from nothing, someone made it. So the conclusion of the scientific method, the universe is eternal, it has always existed, it is life.
And we can't understand what always is, right? Because what is always?
For us it is always limited. It is always one thing, meaning it is the current moment which has always been now.
Okay.
There is neither past nor future, only the now. This is eternity. In quantum mechanics, it is this, a present moment. There is neither past nor future, only a current moment.
And the rest are illusions.
It's all illusions. The past will never happen again. And the future is hypothetical. The only real thing is this moment we are living. What will happen in a minute, we don't even know. So, what happens? If we accept that there is an origin in the universe, it means that someone has made it. So in the 1500s, 20-something, 29, if I remember correctly, Hubble, a great American astronomer in California, had the most powerful telescope at that time on Earth, placed on a mountain called Mount Wilson. And then he studied the galaxies and was able to see the following. The galaxies are, the universe is expanding. They are moving apart, and the farther away, the greater the speed. They move apart more quickly. He calculated all this. So once he had it calculated, do you know what he did? He went backwards. In the sky going backwards, do you know what he found? That everything converged at a point. The expansion of the universe. Everything converges at a point. Google theoretical physicists. It means there was a beginning.
So it's not eternal.
It is clear that it is not eternal. The universe had a beginning, and today we know that it has been 13,780,000,000 years since this universe started. Second aspect. According to Einstein's law of relativity, which relates energy with mass and time, there must be a beginning. Third principle, which shows that there is a third point that shows there is a beginning. Therefore, there is someone who did it. I don't name them, but someone did this Big Bang thing. Someone did it because there is a beginning. Another principle that exists, which has also been demonstrated, is that it is calculated. There are a number of constants in the universe. Planck's constant, the speed of light, 300,000 kilometers, the charge, the weight of particles, the four forces of the universe, gravity, electromagnetic, strong nuclear, weak nuclear, which are exact. If the force of gravity changed just a little, there would be a cataclysm that we would all disappear. Something maintains this. It is an intelligent universe. Here's someone who has made these particles have exactly this amount. The probability is mathematically calculated. It is a mathematically unassumable number. That is to say, the universe has a beginning and an end, which is thermal death, meaning that in the end, the universe will end. How will it end? When the stars go out. The stars have light and heat because inside there is hydrogen, helium, deuterium, and lithium.
Well, we have a little surprise prepared for you, which is a section made by one of our collaborators named Joel. He has a very developed superconsciousness. His superconsciousness is at its peak. And he went around the University of Barcelona asking about various things. You'll see it now.
Hey, do you know that you are doing a lot of good with this? And we have said that one of the problems of the ego is the ignorance that exists. And you are helping people a lot. This awakens, and if you have reached all of this, even if people don't believe it, makes them think. And this is helping to awaken consciousness. This is helping people lose their fear of death, to stop seeing it as a taboo. It is a part of our life, as important as being born, dying. It is moving to another situation. It's our evolution. It's natural. There's no need to be afraid.
Well, we try.
Man, you are doing important work.
And now, Doctor, what would be your final message, since we have this podcast, right? You're going to reach thousands of young people. What is your final message?
I like it. I like being asked this. I will tell you the following, that everything I have told you, do not believe it dogmatically. Believing something dogmatically, you lose freedom and need a leader. I have shared with you some experiences that I have lived. I have tried to seek knowledge and justification for these experiences by reading, studying, consulting with experts from other disciplines that I was not familiar with to help me, until I have come to be convinced of this reality. I urge everyone who watches this podcast, to do the same, to do exactly the same. That they reason, that they seek information, that they criticize, and that they reach their own conclusions. This is what will have value for them. If they believe it because I said it, in 4 days they won't remember, it won't be of any use to you. If they are convinced, yes. And I end with a phrase I really like from Ortega y Gasset. It says, the good teacher, throughout my life, a long life, I have done a lot of teaching. He says, the good teacher is not the one who conditions or provides a conceptual flow to their student audience, but the one who, along with the conceptual flow, awakens the critical spirit. What I have, what I just said. You have to reason, eliminate ignorance, and reach your own conclusions. Agreed? This is the advice I give to the youth.
Ole, do you have the video?
Have you been to my university, the Belvich campus?
Attentive, yes.
I remember all of this.
Hello. We are at the University of Barcelona and we are going to travel to the past to discover where more than 20 years ago Dr. Segarra became a true eminence. Here we go. Let's see. Put your hands like this. This one shakes a bit, huh? Come on, Farewell, Ethan. What do you think about euthanasia? You have an accident, you get run over, you end up in a coma, they tell your family. It's not known if you'll wake up. Do they disconnect you or not? They say...
I think it should be possible.
Yes, me too.
I don't know.
My parents and such always say that there are situations where there's nothing more to be done, that for the sake of dignity in the end, you end life and that's it.
Breathe where there is no hunger. That's what they all tell me. Do you know Dr. Segarra?
Yes, we know.
How do you know him?
From some talks he gave about post-death intraoperative experiences, and since then I've been quite interested in the topic.
And there are people who are skeptical about these topics. What would you say to those people?
What Dr. Segarra says is precisely not to believe it, to look it up on our own, to be curious, to investigate.
You study medicine, right?
Yes, first.
Why do you smoke? It says it's prohibited, doesn't it?
Because I started very early and now let's say I depend a bit on cigarettes.
Do you think public health should cover, for example, lung cancer if you yourself have decided to smoke?
Yes, an STD, for example, can also be contracted because you didn't use a condom, and healthcare will cover it. It doesn't have to put this way. Yes, obviously, if I don't smoke. But in the end, I mean, you don't get cancer just from smoking. There are many more factors. So it's true that it doesn't help, but from not helping to not helping that person, that's not the case either.
Of course, it's it's like if you have a car accident and they tell you they won't cover it because you were driving. Does this gown look good on me? Very good, dude. Yeah? Like I look like a standing doctor. Would you have any questions for Dr. Segarra?
How to deal with treating a person who knows they are incurable? As the second person, you know you can do practically nothing to save their life. Well, how do you tell them? How do you communicate it? How do you face it personally? And how do you manage it?
This has to be answered. How would you handle communicating with a patient who has no cure?
Look, I have experienced very special situations in this regard. There are patients who come and say to you, listen, I have been told, or I know that I have a tumor. Tell me the truth and how much time I have left because I need to organize my life. You cannot deceive this person. You cannot deceive them. You have to tell the truth because they want to organize their life and are aware of their illness and know they are going to die. You have to explain to this person, well, we will look at this, and statistically, you have these percentage chances of life and can live for this amount of time. Very well. Then the patient comes who has a tremendous fear of death. And I have sad experiences with this. For example, during rounds, a young resident, dear Osios, during rounds told me, while making rounds, he said, to look good in front of me, the resident says, the pathology report for this patient has arrived and it is stomach cancer. So this patient was someone who psychologically faced death with great difficulty. This person then, then I calmed him down. Aside from the resident, I said, don't worry, you have a small ulcer, some cells are a bit restless, but with surgery you'll be fine, don't worry, and so on. I tried to calm him. We moved to the next room, and while we were there, the nurse came running, informed us, we went there. He had opened the window, jumped, and killed himself. From then on, in Belfitch Hospital, the rooms are sealed because several patients jumped.
Really?
Well, I tried to open a window in Belvitch, and no window can be opened. So they killed themselves. There are 21 floors through the elevator shaft, the staircase.
Only because they told him they had...
Because they found out they had an incurable disease for whatever reason and they killed themselves. These are the ones who have a real fear of death. So in Belvich Hospital, if you go there, you will see that in the stairwell, every 3 floors there is a net. Every 3 floors it is placed so that if someone jumps, they do not die. And then there is the person who is in the middle, who is neither panicked nor certain. This person is important. Logically, all are important, but we have more chances of convincing them.
What madness?
This thing, that's only with experiencing. Yes, and when a patient comes in and shakes my hand, I can already see how they are. Just if they are sweaty or not, how they move, how they greet you. I say, this one is like this, like that. Yes, we can already see it. Let's see how this one continues.
These are the views that Dr. Segarra had every morning. Do you remember what was the happiest day you spent in this hospital? And the saddest, the happiest day you spent at the hospital, and the saddest?
The happiest day. I had many. For example, the day I performed the first pancreatic islet cell transplant of Langerhans islets, something new that hadn't been done in this country. It brought me great joy because it was a very important thing.
And the saddest one?
Losing a patient. But I have lost many. I have gone through many sad moments. Think that when a patient dies, a part of you dies. So what we have no way to justify is that our serenity, our mind, should be influenced because the next patient needs us and demands us, and we are obliged to give our best to heal them. But when a patient dies, a part of you dies with them.
To conclude, we are with Lazara asking for medicine and an acquaintance of Dr. Sans. Well, look, Dr. Sans operated on my father when I was 2 years old for stomach cancer and basically saved his life. And since then, my father and mother have been grateful to him for life.
If you could say something to him before he passed away, what would it be? Well, simply thank you very much, and thank you for taking care of all of us who have been able to enjoy his attentions.
I mean, they gave me a Lazarus badge. Today, I thank you very much for this. Thank you very much. You have been very kind. Thank you very much. This has brought back pleasant memories. The window, the university that could be seen without patient consultations, a floor, the sealed window that cannot be opened.
The thing about the windows has been incredible. Well, very good. Now to finish, it's the last section, which we call the quick question round. So I'm going to ask you a series of quick questions, and the answer has to be in one sentence. Very few words. Is there life after death?
Yes, there is life after death.
Have you ever been treated like a madman?
They have not treated me like the madman, but it is hard to convince, especially materialist scientists, Western philosophers, and Christian theologians.
What is success for you?
Success for me is an expression of my ego that I have to control.
Do you believe in God?
I believe in a primary energy, in a universal quantum consciousness, in an intelligent designer.
How much do you care about money?
That which can provide my family and me with a dignified living.
Are you for or against the death penalty?
That's a good question. I wouldn't do it, no. It would be very hard for me to do it. I acknowledge that there are cases where it might be justified.
And about euthanasia?
Euthanasia also. I recognize that there are cases that have a medical justification, evidently and personal, at the level of the patient, but I admit that I personally would not do it.
Do you believe in reincarnation?
Yes, I believe in reincarnation.
If you had 50 more years of life, what would you invest them in?
I really like the phrase by Mother Teresa of Calcutta. He who lives without serving does not serve to live. It would serve a lot. I like giving more than wealth.
What is the worst disease of the 21st century?
The stress.
Wait, that's it? Well, doctor, millions of things. That's it. An incredible guest. Thank you very much.